Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating and powerful argument from the early 20th century. It connects a single piece of clothing to the destiny of an entire society. Let's get into it. So, the text we're diving into today is from the early 20th century. It's called The 24th Flash by an author named Said Nursi. And he kicks the whole thing off by citing this really foundational verse from the Quran. So right off the bat, you can see the author's mission here isn't just to lay down a rule. No, he wants to build a case for its inherent wisdom. He's framing it as this totally natural principle, kind of pushing back against what he calls dissolute civilization. All right, let's really unpack his argument. Okay, so to really get inside the author's head on this, we're going to follow his exact line of reasoning. We'll walk through 4 distinct instances of wisdom that he lays out, and then we'll wrap up with his final, pretty personal message. So first things first, the text sets this whole discussion up as a response, really, to what he sees as modern civilization's opposition to veiling. And his goal isn't just to defend the practice. He's trying to show that it has this deep, inherent, and, well, natural wisdom to it. All right, so here's the very first piece of his argument. He says the practice of veiling aligns perfectly with what he describes as a woman's innate nature, her disposition. Now, to build this first point, the author lays out a pretty specific view of female nature. He argues that these characteristics, which he says are just innate to women, well, they logically lead to a need and even a desire for the kind of protection that he believes veiling offers. And get this, to support this idea, the author actually puts a number on it. He claims that a big majority of women, something like 7 out of 10 in his estimation, naturally prefer not to be the center of attention. So based on that premise, he concludes that veiling is actually a source of comfort, It shields them from unwanted gazes. So the key takeaway here, the crucial point, is that the text presents veiling not as some kind of restriction, but as a form of protection. It's all framed as something that's rooted in and even supportive of what the author defines as a woman's fundamental nature. Okay, let's move on to his second instance of wisdom. This one totally reframes the concept of marriage, taking it way beyond just this worldly life. And this idea is absolutely central to his second point. The text is basically saying that the bond of marriage isn't just a temporary thing. Nope, it has a spiritual dimension that stretches all the way into the hereafter. And here's where we see the core contrast the author is drawing. He's arguing that a relationship built on shared faith creates a kind of love that can totally transcend physical appearance and time. On the other hand, in his view, a purely worldly love, well, that's fleeting, it's superficial, and it just fades away as beauty does. So the text uses this idea to argue that mutual religious commitment is really the most important thing in a marriage. And this just reinforces his central theme, right? That the partnership is eternal. So both people should be striving to be worthy of that incredible bond. All right, on to the third wisdom. This one zooms in on the practical impact of dress on the stability and trust right inside the family. So here, the author draws a direct line between a specific behavior, how a person dresses, and the emotional bedrock of a marriage. We're talking about mutual confidence and respect. And to back this up, the author presents some, well, pretty striking figures of his own. He claims that 9 out of 10 women who dress immodestly will find other men more attractive. But for men, he says it's only 1 in 20 who'll feel the same about other women. So, based on this huge claim difference, he argues that immodest dress is a major risk to marital trust. Now, this next point is really specific and kind of complex. It's all about perception. He argues that while a relative's face always reminds you of kinship, right? Well, other parts of the body don't have that same built-in marker. So he suggests that their exposure can actually break down natural inhibitions, especially, and these are his words, among those of weak character, even within a family. Okay, let's move to the final instance of wisdom. This is where he really zooms out, expanding the argument from the private world of the family to the public sphere of society as a whole. So the author lays out this whole chain of events that he believes will happen in society. The logic goes something like this. First, immodest dress becomes the norm. Then men, who he says still prefer chaste partners for marriage, start to struggle to find suitable wives. And the result? He concludes that men either stay single or they turn elsewhere, and this causes a really sharp drop in marriage rates. This next one is a really unique argument he brings in. It's an environmental argument, actually, to support his case. He claims the impact of dress codes isn't universal. So, In what he calls cold Europe, with its, quote, frigid people, he suggests immodest dress doesn't really have much effect. But in what he calls torrid Asia, with its sensitive people, he argues that the very same style of dress is constantly exciting lusts and ultimately leads to societal decay. Okay, so the text wraps up with a direct address to the author's female followers. And this is where he reframes all his previous arguments in these really personal and deeply spiritual terms. This final section really hammers home a woman's spiritual role, especially as a mother. The argument is that her true compassion should be focused on her children's salvation in the hereafter. And because of that, her role as their first and most important teacher is just paramount. And to really drive this point home, the author shares a personal story. He swears that of all the lessons he's ever learned in his long life, the ones that came from his mother, well, they remain the most profound, the most foundational, the ones that shaped his entire character. So the final takeaway he offers the reader is this, that true, lasting happiness, real contentment, it's not found outside religious boundaries. It's found within the proper sphere of family life. And he argues that any pleasure you seek outside that sphere, well, it just brings far, far greater pain along with it. So at the end of the day, what has the author really done here? He's woven this incredibly comprehensive argument that presents a single piece of clothing as a principle that's deeply interconnected with, well, with everything, from a woman's innate nature and her eternal life, all the way to the stability of the family and the very future of a nation. It's a really powerful demonstration of how, in his worldview, one single personal act can actually shape the destiny of an entire society.